90%, 95% of all hikers are not through hikers. We're day hikers or section hikers or we're weekend warriors. We look up to you guys. We're jealous and we're envious. We want to kind of feel what that feels like, but it just might not be practical. So I created the blog to help document that. So in case somebody like me is sitting at a desk going, God, I'd like to go ahead and do a through hike. Maybe they find the blog and they say, hey, that dude did it.
So he did all the strategic planning for the whole hike. He broke it down into all the individual day hikes that we would need to do in order to complete it, which worked out to about 90 different hikes the way that he had it set up.
And that really kind of just evolved into a 3.5 year project of trying to figure out how to do day hikes of the AZT.
It's interesting because it happened to be day hikes because it just happens to be the way he has to work and get back and really didn't have a lot of time to take a week or to take 3 or 4 days off.
And so he'll go from, his tax season, which is really like a grind that has him behind a desk and, sedentary for a long period of time. And then when that ends, he'll go into marathon running. And so he's had a lot of injuries because, the body can't take this extreme.
I'll probably get to see the state unlike anything I ever could have seen, in my life. So the adventure began for me.
I know you guys can't probably hear me right now, but these are my first steps on the Arizona Trail. Woo!
The Arizona Trail is an 800-mile wilderness route across the state of Arizona. It starts at the Mexico border in the south and runs to the Utah border in the north. It's surprisingly diverse, crossing desert, mountain, forest, and canyon ecosystems.
And there I was sitting at my desk doing the same thing I had done repetitively over and over and over again for 15 years. And I remember driving out to a local trailhead and looking out in the desert. And I'm like, look, Jake, there's the desert and there's a trail. I want to explore. So then the next week, I set out on that trail through McDowell's. We're talking really easy hiking, but it kind of gave me this crazy sense of adventure. My wife was like, yeah, you cannot leave this house for 5 months and think that you could come back and everything will be fine.
It's almost like the goal has to stretch him. So the goal has to be grand, but obviously he didn't have the time. We have, between us 5 kids and lots going on. So he had to figure out a way to do that and create a work-life balance.
Now I got a vision. I could do a national trail, but I could do it in a way that doesn't disrupt the family. I could do it in day hikes. So I picked Pine Trailhead, just north of Payson. We went 5 miles out in one direction, 5 miles coming back toward the car. And I figured that if it was too much for us, we could go ahead and just pull the ripcord at the time and just go home.
He described it as this glorious event. It wasn't as enjoyable as I think he made it out to be. It was raining, it was pouring, it was mud from the night before. I just remember feeling like my feet were just caked in mud and they were 10 pounds apiece. And I was just hurting for the last half of that hike. But he was just so hyped.
So it was a challenging hike, but by the time we got done with it, we actually, there was a sense of pride that you're like, I actually did 20 miles. So with that, this out and back concept kind of got started. Grab the trail somewhere, hike out as far as you can, have lunch, have a snack, turn about, and then hike back.
The whole process of going through discovery of what you think is going to happen or maybe happen. The beginning, going through Costco and seeing, hey, they got bear spray. I better buy some. So Jim and I will each have a can of bear spray because we need to protect ourselves from all these Arizona bears. I never saw a bear. Jim never saw a bear. They may live here somewhere, but I never saw one.
So early on, I kept cashing out of people that wanted to hike 20 miles. So I'd find unsuspecting victims and I would be like, hey, let's go hiking. I took our good friend of mine, Dave. He's like, why do you do this again? This is not fun. So this is Eric. He's my nephew. And Eric and I actually started originally the Arizona Trail hiking way back in 2016. He had just graduated high school. He hadn't quite figured out really what he wanted to do. And I said, Eric, I'll financially sponsor you if you want to do it.
One week we were hiking and he's like, oh, would you do that? And I told him, yeah. And I know he wanted to go hike it as well. I think that's why he kind of mentioned it. He's like, oh, you can do it. I can't. But And then he kind of just like dared me to do it. He's like, no, you won't. He won't do it. And then 2 weeks later, I bought a ticket and flew out there. And we went, and I flew to Georgia, flew to Atlanta, and then went up to Amacola Falls and started hiking.
Jim kind of tracked him during that time on GPS and kind of almost vicariously did the trail with him in some ways.
It was amazing. I don't think I'd ever done that if it wasn't for Jim. The people I met on the trail, man, I still have friends from 2017 when I hiked that trail I still talk to today.
And I think when he got back, I picked him up at the airport and I asked him, I said, okay, so how has this changed you? He said, I could live anywhere. And he said, I could talk to anybody.
You know, from there, I think he discovered that he likes to kind of, you know, work with his hands, kind of be out in the field. So he became an EMT, and then he did his, you know, fire training and did really well. And I think the trail probably prepared him for that. So he's been able to share this with, you know, people he loves and cares about, which is awesome to see.
With Eric off to through hike the Appalachian Trail, Jim would need a new victim.
And so he was my, you know, accountant for many years, and a friendship formed out of that.
We did a couple marathons together and so forth. So I called Tom. I'm like, Tom, do you like hiking or backpacking?
You know, he's a little shorter than I am, so his legs move a little quicker. And if you remember the cartoon where there was kind of that little alien guy that would come down and, you know, he'd walk around really fast. Jim sometimes kind of reminds me of that, like, you know, when he's moving, because, you know, he's in high gear when he's going, and if I stop for a minute to take a picture of a lizard or something and I look up, it's like he's gone.
I joke, I said, Tom, you're actually like the best piece of gear a guy could have. Come on, Jim, let's get going, come on. He would play music on his phone when we were going up a hill and he could see me like struggling. So I couldn't have finished the trail without him.
We managed, I don't know how, every single hike we managed to get through. We didn't have one hike that we ever had to like turn around and call it off and say, no, we can't do it.
It's raining. It's raining pretty good.
It didn't matter if it rained for 9 miles and we had to carry, you know, 4 inches of mud on the bottom of our boots to get back to the car, but, you know, we made it.
We had a couple scary incidents. We were clipping at a really good pace, and I could see Tom was hiking in front of me. I could see him kind of like pop in, and then he would disappear. He'd pop out, he'd disappear. And then I saw him pop out, and then I saw him, it almost looked like he was diving into a swimming pool.
You know, I was just going downhill, cruising along, moving, and all of a sudden it was like somebody reached out and grabbed my shoe. I didn't let go, and it was my left shoe, and all of a sudden my whole body weight just got thrown off balance.
I said, oh shit, he just went off the edge.
I hear this voice coming in, Tom, 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 you know, and I'm laughing, and I can't do anything.
And I got to the spot where he had launched off. It was like Wile E. Coyote from like the cartoons when I was a kid, when they would go off the side and they'd be like, ah, and then there he is in a bush. And there he was in a bush.
He's like, Tom, you all right? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just stuck here in this thing. I can't move, I can't do anything.
I'm 5'6", Tom's, you know, 6'2", you know, he's probably got a good 50 pounds on me just because of size.
He gives me the pole, I grab the pole, and then he starts pulling, and he pulls me up, you know, and manages to get me up where I could start grabbing on and get myself climbed up and back on the trail. I look back down and I go, well, that could have been my last hike.
And I got him back on there, and he looks at me and he's like, crap, I lost my frickin' water bottle.
But, you know, we made it. Nobody was hurt, didn't get scratched or anything. And I lost my good water bottle. So somewhere down the bottom of that canyon, there's a nice insulated green water bottle. It probably still has ice in it. I don't know. It was very good water bottle.
The more you try to get it out, the worse it will hurt you.
Yeah, the last year was probably the most challenging. I paid like slight attention to the schedule, like year 2, year 3, but it was all cherry picking. And then I finally got to year 4, and I'm like, okay, let me really look at this. And I mapped it all out. I had a spreadsheet, and I was like, oh crap. Probably the last 4 or 5 hikes were hard to get to. We had to do some sneaking through some cattle ranches with our Jeep to find like the trailhead. If we added up hiking time versus driving time, they're probably in parity. I want to say like 600 hours of hiking, we probably easily spent 600 hours of driving to the trail. The other thing about day hiking is thru hikers have thru hiker legs after a week or two.
We had our one long hike, and that was our conditioning. So the day after you hiked, I mean, you knew it. You were sore, you were stiff. Getting out of that car after we drove back from the hike, you know, you feel like you got rigor mortis kicking in.
You know, I mean, there's an enormous sense of accomplishment for a day hiker to go ahead and be able to hit through that challenge. If your mindset really wasn't committed toward it, you know, people would be like, this is stupid, why would we do this? This is a lot of work.
I love that last, like, I don't know, 5-10 miles where you just feel like you're floating. You're just like high on endorphins and your body's just kind of just spinning the legs. I don't know, autopilot. I'm too tired to talk.
Apart from that, it's really just having a good backpack. You know, that's why Tom and I kind of started PBD. Was we almost needed a purpose-built backpack that was more for long distance day hiking. It's like an oxymoron. Most people are accustomed to a 3 to 5 mile day hike, and that's it. So we needed something that could basically, we could live out of all day.
Jim and I are both kind of like creative in our own way, problem solvers in our own way. All of a sudden, next thing I know, he's got a sewing machine at home, and he's starting to sew stuff up.
It's not a typical situation for an accountant. I'm like, I'm going to teach myself to sew and not just, you know, basic things, but, you know, construct backpacks. So we started with one basic sewing machine, and then from there that advanced to getting a space, several sewing machines, and then hiring people to make the backpacks.
Kim is my sister. So she had no choice to become employed here. Kim manages all the orders. Kim manages the website. If it wasn't for Kim, nothing would happen.
Sometimes he'd get up at 2 or 3 in the morning to fulfill an order till he had people to help him out. That's how he did things. Yeah, it became a little factory. You know, a section for cutting, a section for sewing, and then, you know, use the chairs to kind of store things.
The whole process was a challenge for me because you have to actually push yourself beyond the limits that you feel capable, and through that pain and through that uncertainty is the only way you could grow as a human being.
It might be challenging at the time, but you always feel that sense of accomplishment getting through it, whether you're pushing yourself to try to go a certain speed, or you're trying to go a longer distance, or you're trying to go see something. Let's see if we can get up there. Let's see if we can get to that place and go see, you know, what is there.
It really was a growth experience, I guess.
We did it!
It's not so much a matter of determination. It's a matter of commitment. You get done with your hiking, you go back and you sleep in your bed, and then you go to work. And then life happens, and like the kids need you, and they have a play, and you know, you got soccer practice, and you have all this stuff or what have you. So you quickly will find all of these distractions or like roadblocks that you can't get back on trail. People do what they really want to do because they make that a priority. And Tom and I made it a priority. So in case somebody like me is sitting at a desk and they say, hey, that dude did it,